Hi. So today we're going to talk about cartilage and bone. So we're going to start with cartilage. Okay, and cartilage is going to be a material that can stand up to both tension as well as compression. So these are going to be found in areas where there's going to be a lot of pressure, there's going to be a lot of tension and compression, and this is often going to be between two bones. Okay, so we'll think about the cartilage is between our vertebra. It's also going to be between our knees, all those types of things. It's going to be tough, but flexible. Okay, so we're going to talk about bones soon. Bones are also going to be tough, but we don't think of them as being as flexible. So cartilage is going to be kind of in this more flexible group. And what it's going to do is it's going to provide this resilient rigidity to the structure it supports. So it's going to add rigidity to the structure it supports. Okay, and often these are going to be different bones. Okay, we're going to find this between, again, our cartilage in our back. It's also going to add support to certain different parts of our bodies, like our ears and our nose and things like that. Okay, like all connective tissues, there's going to be some components. So let's talk about the components. Okay, and the first is going to be one of the cells. So these are chondroblasts. And chondroblasts are going to be the kind of major cell type when the cartilage is growing. Okay, so we'll say this is a predominant cell type in growing cartilage. It is going to produce the matrix that is going to be found in the cartilage. Okay, and the chondroblasts are going to be functional and continuing to produce this matrix until the skeleton stops growing. Okay, so we'll kind of add in this until skeleton stops growing. Okay. Now, once the skeleton stops growing, we're going to go to the next type of cell, which is going to be the chondrocytes. Okay, so we usually start off with blasts. These are the immature cells. This is when things are growing. And then we go to cytes when we're now in the matured stage of whatever connective tissue. And so these are going to be the mature cartilage cells. Okay. Both the chondroblasts and the chondrocytes are going to be located in cavities called lacunae. So this is going to be an important word. So the lacunae, they kind of look like this, where you'll have the cell kind of in there, and then there'll just kind of be a little bit of a cavity around the cell. That will be the lacunae, and then outside of that will be where the matrix is. Okay, so they sometimes, in my mind, look like little eyes. So the eye part would actually be the cell. So this could be a chondroblast or a chondrocyte. And then there's just this little bit of area around it, this cavity, which we're going to call the lacunae. So that would be this structure right here. Okay. So those are going to be the cells that we have, chondroblasts, chondrocytes. Now we're going to move on and talk about the ground substance. So the ground substance, so the kind of the matrix, this is going to be very firm in the cartilage. Firm. It's going to have large amounts of these things called GAGs. So it contains large amounts of GAGs. And these are going to stand for oops, I forgot an S. Let me start that. Glycosaminoglycans. Okay. And so you kind of get the GAG for the GAGs right there. Okay, and we've talked about these before previously when we're talking about just the connective tissues in general. These are going to be kind of protein cores that then have these carbohydrates that are sticking out around them. One of the major groups that's going to be found in cartilage are going to be something called chondroitin sulfate. And it's also going to have this hyaluronic acid. Okay. There also are going to be collagen fibers. So that's kind of the fluid part of the ground substance. Then we're going to have these firmly bound collagen fibers. Okay. And sometimes elastic fibers. Okay, and in addition to that, there is also going to be up to 80% water. So these have a lot of water in them. Okay, and so these are going to kind of allow for a fluid type matrix that enables cartilage to compress and then rebound. Okay, so this allows for compression and kind of a rebound. So then it goes back to its normal shape. Okay, and this is also going to help nourish the cells. Oops, that is not how you spell that at all. Of the cartilage, okay? Now, one of the reasons why this is so important that nourishes cells is that cartilage is going to have no vascular tissue and no nerve fibers. Okay, so just kind of some properties. Okay, so it's avascular, which means it has no blood vessels. It's also going to have no nerve fibers. Okay, so these cells that are in here, these chondroblasts and chondrocytes, they need some type of nutrients because otherwise they would be dead. And so what happens is that around cartilage, we're going to have this membrane that is going to secrete the important substances, okay? And so cartilage receives nutrients from membrane surrounding it, okay? And this membrane is called the perichondrium. Okay, this peri often means like kind of around. You can think of like perimeter. The perichondrium is vascular. Okay, and so the perichondrium is going to secrete, it's going to get blood from the rest of the body. It's then going to be able to pass on oxygen and other nutrients that are important. Okay, and the perichondrium is also going to be the tissue that gives rise to the chondroblasts and the chondrocytes. So perichondrium gives rise to chondroblasts and chondrocytes. Okay, so these are going to be the big cells and the perichondrium, which is going to surround the tissue. Okay, so this is going to be around the cartilage. The perichondrium is going to then be vascular and supports these cells. Okay, otherwise they would not be kind of able to survive. Now, what happens is that these cartilage cells, they themselves, again, are avascular, no nerve fibers. They are going to recover from injuries very, very slowly. And as we age, the cartilage cells lose the ability to divide, okay? And so this makes them heal very slowly and poorly. So this is another property. Okay, and so if you don't have these issues with your cartilage right now, you probably at some point will have some issues with your knee joints, your back, things like that. And that's because this cartilage kind of loses its ability to divide and it does not heal very quickly, okay? So we'll say cartilage cells lose ability to divide. Okay, so if they can't divide, that means that you can't have new cells. And then they heal slowly. And if they do heal, it's going to be poorly. So oftentimes when you mess with this kind of stuff in your body, you know, in your knees or your back, there's not much they can really do for you at that point. Okay, so we're gonna move on and we're gonna talk about the different types of cartilage. Okay, so there are gonna be 3 major types. And so the first one we're gonna talk about is called hyaline cartilage. So when you're studying for this, you're gonna wanna start recognizing the 3 different types, they're slightly different in appearance. They're going to be found in different locations. So always kind of, make those note cards where you're going to have, on the front, maybe a picture of what hyaline cartilage, and I'll show you what that looks like right here. So we'll come back to this picture in a second, but this is what hyaline cartilage looks like. So you could have a picture of the hyaline cartilage and then on the front of it say, name this type of cartilage. And then on the back, you would say hyaline. And then another one, you could have this on the front and then you could have it says like, where is this located? And we're going to learn that, well, it's located in the embryonic skeleton, it's at the end of long bones, joint cavities, and in the costal cartilages of the ribs, cartilage of the nose, trachea, and larynx. And so you're gonna wanna know a couple of those. We're never gonna ask you like every single, name every single location you're gonna find this cartilage, but you should know at least a couple of them. I would say know at least 2 locations for each of the cartilages. Okay, so we're gonna get back, we'll learn about hyaline, and then we'll come back to this picture so we can look at it again. Okay, so hyaline cartilage is going to be the most abundant. Okay, so it's found in lots of different areas. Sometimes people call this gristle, and the reason why I wanted to bring that up is because if you've ever eaten ribs or any kind of meat, you often will run into something called gristle. It's not very fun to eat because it's really hard. And so that is actually the hyaline cartilage. I always get it on when I'm eating ribs. It can be on kind of one of the end sides and it will fall off of the bone, but it is not bone material, it's cartilage, and it's going to be something that you would not want to eat. Okay, it is going to have a large amount of collagen fibers, but you can't really see them. So we'll say large amounts of collagen fibers. But when you're looking at this under a microscope, and so when you look at the lab of the slides that we have for hyaline cartilage, it's very difficult to see any fibers, okay? So I'm gonna say they're not apparent. Okay, when you look at the matrix is mostly what you're looking at, and the matrix looks kind of shiny, and again, not very many fibers, okay? There are very few chondrocytes in this group, few chondrocytes. Okay, and so if you look at the total volume, there's like 1 to 10% of it is going to be the chondrocytes. Okay, so most of it's going to be the matrix and those collagen fibers. Okay, its main function is going to provide firm support with pliability. Okay, so provides firm support with some pliability. Okay, so it's going to be important that it's supportive, but then has a little bit of pliability, not too flexible, but some. Okay, now we're going to talk about where it's found. Okay, so hyaline cartilage locations. And it's found in quite a few locations. Okay, so it's going to cover the ends of long bones. Okay, so when we're talking about long bones, we're talking about like the femur, you know, the humerus, things like that, that are going to be these pretty long bones, and they're going to be on the ends where they're then going to articulate. Okay, and so these are going to be called articulating cartilage. Okay, and it provides kind of this springy pad that absorbs compression at joints. Okay, so these are going to be in locations that are going to withstand a lot of pressure, and so this kind of cartilage is going to allow for that to happen. Okay, this is also going to be found at the tip of your nose. So the part that you can kind of bend back and forth on your nose, that is going to be made out of hyaline cartilage. It's going to be found at the kind of the sternum rib connection. So it connects ribs to sternum. It's also going to be found in the trachea and other upper respiratory system pathways. Okay, so it kind of gives them support. You know, the trachea is very different from something like the esophagus because it needs to stay open, because the esophagus, you know, it's going to be running and it can be kind of closed until food's going through it, but we need the trachea to have some structure. And so kind of the hyaline cartilage will be around the trachea, keeping it open so that air can go in and not have this collapse. Okay, if you feel your neck, you can feel some of that cartilage and support on the actual trachea. It obviously cannot support enormous amounts of compression, and it can break if you're hit in the right spot, but it does a really good job of keeping that area open. Okay, and then the last thing is when a baby is forming in the embryonic stage, the skeleton is mostly made out of hyaline cartilage. So it'll start off as hyaline cartilage, and then as the babies grow, it will start turning into bone. But after birth, it still is present in these things called epiphyseal plates. So I'll write that out. So it's going to be found in making up most of the embryonic skeleton. Okay, and then it persists into childhood in these places called epiphyseal plates. And you can sometimes call these growth plates. We will look more at these when we go into the bones later on. But these are the locations where the bones are actively growing. Okay, and so in childhood, you know, one of the ways that we get taller is that these locations on the bones will actually get bigger. Okay, so those are the actively growing regions near the end of long bones. Okay, and we'll again look at that when we're talking during the skeleton part. Okay, so that's hyaline cartilage. Okay, and so again, here's what hyaline cartilage looks like. You can't really see the fibers. If you look at the slides that are going to be on the lab, you can't really see anything. You have kind of these groupings of the cells, and so these are going to be chondrocytes. Okay, you kind of have this dark thing, which is the nucleus, and then inside the cell, you know, right here, and then the whole structure that the cell is in is called the lacunae. Okay. So you'll have pictures of these on the PowerPoint that I posted. All right, the next type of cartilage is going to be called elastic cartilage. Okay, and so elastic cartilage is going to appear similar to hyaline cartilage, but what the big difference is you're gonna start seeing a bunch of fibers. Okay, and these are gonna be elastic fibers. So these are going to provide a little more stretch and kind of strength to these areas. Okay, so I think it looks very different. If you look at these kind of right next to each other, you can see that there are no fibers that are visible. So this is hyaline, and then this is going to be the elastic. So you can see all these elastic tissues present. Okay. All right, so let's kind of give you some details about this. Okay, so it is similar to hyaline, but it's going to have more elastic fibers. Okay, so there is also going to be collagen fibers, you just can't see them very well. So elastic fibers tend to stick out when you're looking at these. Okay, these are going to be found in regions where strength and exceptional stretchability are needed. Okay, so found where strength and stretchability are needed. Okay, and so this is going to be found on your ear. So your ear is going to be made out of this type. And also it's going to be found in this location called the epiglottis. Okay, and this is going to be a flap of tissue that covers the opening of the respiratory passageway when we swallow. When we swallow. Okay, so you want to make sure that no food gets down there. Okay, so here is again the elastic cartilage, and so you can see the chondrocyte in here. It's still called a lacunae, and you're going to see these darker structures. So this is going to be the kind of defining characteristic, is these darker fibers that you can see that are absent in the hyaline cartilage. Okay, this is specifically going to be from a human ear, kind of at the very top of it. So it's very flexible. So it allows for stretching, but also kind of for some strength. All right, we're going to move on to our last type of cartilage, which is going to be fibrocartilage. All right, and this is going to look quite different, I think, from the other ones. So the main thing you're going to start seeing is that they have the cells, and they have the cells in the lacunae, but they kind of are all on the same line. Whereas when you're looking at these other ones, you kind of have them just all over the place. They're not in any particular order. But when you have fibrocartilage, you have kind of these lines of cells, and then in between it, you have these fibers. Okay, so the collagen fibers are going to be found in here. And so this is going to be the main difference, where you can kind of tell the fibrocartilage. Now, fibrocartilage, okay, so again, it's going to have rows of chondrocytes. Rows of chondrocytes. So that's going to be one of the defining characteristics for you to recognize it. That alternate with thick collagen fibers. Okay, so you're going to see lots of fibers in this one as well. Okay, this is both resistant to tension and compression. To tension and compression. Okay, and it's going to be found in areas that need to be able to support kind of a lot of pressure. So found where strong support and the ability to withstand heavy pressure is needed. Okay, and so the places we're going to find these are in the areas that are going to withstand the highest amount of kind of pressure. So you're going to find these in the intervertebral discs. Oops, I spelled that with a C actually. Okay, so these are going to be in between the vertebra. Okay, so we can think of them as resilient cushions between vertebra. Okay, they're also going to be found in the cartilage of the knee. So these are going to be formed the meniscus or the menisci. Okay, and then they're also going to be found in the symphysis of the pubis. Okay, and so again, these areas are where you're going to have lots. This is where all of your weight is resting on. Okay, and so they're going to have to be resilient. These are the things also that definitely start to wear and tear as you get older. Okay, so people start to have hip pain, they start to have knee pain and back pain. Okay, and this is just kind of what happens. Now, a little bit about why these, not just fibrocartilage, but the other types of cartilage. Actually, before I go on to that, let me just show you again this. So we're going to have these rows of the chondrocytes with the lacunae, fibers in between. This is going to be from the intervertebral discs. Okay, and so very kind of strong, and you can see those collagen fibers because they're going to be really important in providing the strength and allowing for compression. All right, so a little bit about kind of a clinical, I guess it doesn't really matter. So clinical, so cartilage again is the avascular, which means it has no blood vessels. And so what happens is, again, as we age, the cartilage cells lose their ability to divide. Okay, and so what that means is that if you injure yourself, it's going to heal very slowly. Okay, and another thing is as we age, the cartilage is going to tend to calcify, calcifies, or even turns into bone, or even, which we call ossify, which basically just means bony. And so what happens is that when they do that, it interrupts the way that they normally absorb nutrients. And so the chondrocytes actually will be poorly nourished and ultimately die. Chondrocytes are poorly nourished and die. Okay, and so that's going to be kind of one of the things that happens with this type of material, with the cartilage. All right.